Hello, Principal. Let's start the show.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of Patterson's auto shop. I'd been under the hood of a busted Chevy for 3 hours, but my mind wasn't on the engine. It was on what my 15-year-old daughter had said at dinner the night before. Dev says Shakespeare understood women better than any man alive. Dev, not Mr. Devon. Dev. I wiped my hands on the oil-stained rag and glanced at my watch. 4:30. Tracy would be picking up Ellie from school soon, probably stopping by the grocery store after. Same routine for the past 6 months. Same routine since she started working as the substitute administrator at Riverside High. "Earth to Danny?" Tony called from across the garage. "You gonna fix that Chevy or just stare at it?" Danny Sullivan. 38 years old, married 16 years, father to one brilliant daughter who apparently called her English teacher by his first name. I'd been Danny the mechanic for most of my adult life, content to work with my hands while my wife climbed the social ladder one PTA meeting at a time. "Just thinking," I said. "Dangerous habit," Tony laughed, his thick Boston accent cutting through the hum of the hydraulic lift, especially for married men, if only he knew. That evening, I sat at our kitchen table pretending to read the sports section while Tracy prepared dinner. She hummed some tune I didn't recognize, moving around our modest kitchen like she owned the world. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore that blue dress she'd bought for the school's fundraiser last month. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Fine. Busy. The usual administrative chaos." She didn't look up from the stove. "Mr. Devon needed help organizing the drama club's prop room. Some of those kids are so creative." Mr. Devon, not Dev. Ellie bounded into the kitchen, backpack slung over her shoulder, her dark hair, my hair, falling across her face. "Hey, kiddo," I said. "How was school?" "Good. Dev assigned us this amazing project on tragic heroes." "I'm doing Lady Macbeth!" Her eyes lit up as she spoke. Tracy's back stiffened almost imperceptibly. Almost. "That's Mr. Devon, sweetie," Tracy said without turning around. "Right. Sorry, Mr. Devon." But Ellie winked at me when she said it. That night, after Tracy fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Our bedroom felt smaller somehow, like the walls were closing in. Tracy's breathing was steady beside me, but something felt different. Wrong. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to my workshop in the basement. It wasn't much, just a corner where I kept my tools and a small desk where I sometimes sketched out engine repairs. But it was mine. I pulled out a notebook and started writing. Not about engines or repairs, but about the little things I'd noticed over the past few months. Tracy's new perfume, the way she checked her phone constantly, how she'd started working late 3 nights a week, and now Ellie calling her teacher Dev. 3 days later, Tracy forgot her phone. She'd rushed out that morning, late for some meeting with the principal, and left it charging on the kitchen counter. I stared at it while I drank my coffee, knowing I shouldn't but unable to stop myself. The screen lit up with a text message. "Thanks for last night. You're amazing. XO, the sender, Mr. Devon." My coffee mug hit the floor and shattered. Brown liquid spread across our white tile floor like spilled blood. I stood there, frozen, staring at those words until the screen went dark again. "Thanks for last night." I cleaned up the mess with shaking hands, threw the broken pieces in the trash, and went to work. But I couldn't concentrate. Every car that came through the shop looked the same. Every customer sounded like they were speaking underwater. "You look like hell," Tony said around noon. "What's eating you?" I almost told him. The words were right there, ready to spill out. But something held me back. Maybe pride. Maybe the hope that I was wrong. "Just tired," I said. That evening, I asked Tracy about her meeting. "It went well," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "We're planning the winter formal, Mr. Devon has some interesting ideas for decorations." "I bet he does." She glanced at me then, something flashing across her face. Guilt? Fear? It was gone too quickly to tell. "I left my phone here this morning," she said. "Did anyone call?" "I wouldn't know. I was at work." "Right, of course." Later that night, I watched Tracy scroll through her messages, her thumb moving quickly across the screen. Deleting, I realized. She was deleting messages. The parent-teacher conference was scheduled for Thursday at 7 p.m. Tracy had suggested we go together, but I told her I'd meet her there. She seemed relieved. I arrived early and wandered the hallways of Riverside High, past the trophy cases and bulletin boards covered with student artwork. The school smelled like disinfectant and teenage anxiety, familiar scents from my own high school days 20 years ago. I found Tracy in the English hallway, standing outside room 237. She wasn't alone. Mr. Devon was tall and lean, probably my age, but better preserved. Sandy hair with just enough gray at the temples to look distinguished. He wore a navy blazer over dark jeans, the kind of casual professional look that screamed, "I'm creative but responsible." They were standing close, too close for a professional conversation. Tracy's hand rested on his forearm, and they were both laughing at something he'd said. When they saw me approaching, they jumped apart like teenagers caught making out. "Danny." Tracy's voice was too bright, too cheerful. "This is Mr. Devon, Ellie's English teacher. Michael, this is my husband." Michael Devon extended his hand, and I shook it. His grip was firm, confident, the grip of a man who thought he was winning. "Pleasure to meet you, Danny. Your daughter is exceptional. Truly gifted." "She gets that from her mother," I said, watching Tracy's face. She blushed. The conference was standard. Ellie was doing well, participating in class, showing real potential as a writer. Devon spoke about her with an enthusiasm that seemed genuine, but I couldn't shake the image of Tracy's hand on his arm. As we prepared to leave, Devon stopped us. "Actually, Danny, I'm glad I caught you. We're organizing a school carnival next month, and we could use volunteers. Any chance you'd be interested in helping out?" I looked at Tracy. She seemed nervous. "I'd love to," I said. That weekend, I told Tracy I was going fishing with Tony. Instead, I drove to the public library and found a quiet corner in the basement. I needed time to think, away from the house, away from her. I made a list of everything I knew: the text message, Ellie calling him Dev, Tracy working late, the way they acted at school, Tracy's new habits. It wasn't proof, but it was enough. My wife was having an affair with my daughter's English teacher. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I could confront them directly, but that would just push them underground. I could demand a divorce, but Tracy would get half of everything. Maybe more. She'd probably get custody of Ellie too, and then what? My daughter would be raised by an adulterer and her lover? No. If Tracy wanted to play games, I'd play along, but I'd play to win. I spent the rest of that Sunday in the library researching divorce law and custody arrangements. I learned about evidence gathering, about private investigators, about the difference between fault and no-fault divorce. By the time I got home, I had the beginning of a plan. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to an electronics store across town. I bought a small digital recorder, the kind journalists use for interviews, and a motion-activated camera designed for wildlife photography. The recorder went into Tracy's car, hidden under the driver's seat and secured with magnetic tape. The camera took more thought. I finally settled on mounting it inside an old toolbox I kept in the garage, angled to capture the driveway in front of the house. That afternoon, I volunteered to help set up for the school carnival. The event was still 3 weeks away, but they needed people to organize supplies and coordinate with vendors. I worked alongside other parents and teachers, keeping my head down and my ears open. It didn't take long to learn the school gossip network. Mrs. Peterson from the math department had been there for 30 years and knew everyone's business. "That Mr. Devon is quite the charmer," she said, as we sorted through boxes of decorations. "All the mothers love him." "Seems like a good teacher," I said carefully. "Oh, he is, but he's had some troubles. His ex-wife Cheryl used to work here as a counselor. They had a messy divorce about 2 years ago." "Accusations flew both ways, if you know what I mean." I didn't, but I nodded anyway. "She still lives in town," Mrs. Peterson continued. "Works at the community center now." Poor thing never got over it. That evening, I found Cheryl Devon's address in the phone book. Cheryl Devon lived in a small apartment complex on the wrong side of town. When she answered the door, I could see why Michael had moved on. She was thin to the point of gaunt, with prematurely gray hair and tired eyes. "Mrs. Devon? I'm Danny Sullivan. My daughter goes to Riverside High. If this is about Michael, I don't want to hear it," she said, starting to close the door. "Actually, it is about Michael." but not the way you think. She paused, studying my face. What do you mean? I have reason to believe my wife is having an affair with your ex-husband. I was hoping you might be willing to help me prove it. Cheryl's expression changed from suspicion to something like predatory interest. Come in, she said. Her apartment was small but clean, decorated with the kind of motivational posters you see in counseling offices. She made coffee while I explained what I'd discovered. It sounds familiar, she said when I finished. Michael has a pattern. He targets married women, usually ones who are feeling neglected or unappreciated. He makes them feel special, intellectual, like they're the only person who truly understands him. How long did your marriage last? 12 years. But he was cheating for at least 5 of them, probably longer. I was just too stupid to see it. What finally opened your eyes? Cheryl smiled, but there was no humor in it. I found love letters. Dozens of them from different women over the years. He kept them like trophies. The man has an ego the size of Texas. Do you still have them? Some. Why? Because I think my wife might have written him similar letters. And if she has, that would be evidence of the affair. Cheryl leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. What exactly are you planning, Danny? I'm planning to get my life back. The Riverside High Carnival was held on a crisp Saturday in October. The parking lot was transformed into a maze of game booths, food trucks, and rides. I'd volunteered to work the dunking booth, which gave me a perfect view of the main entrance and most of the activities. Tracy had arrived early with the other PTA volunteers. She wore jeans and a red sweater that brought out the highlights in her hair. She looked beautiful, and for a moment I felt the old familiar ache of loving someone who no longer loved you back. Michael Devon was working the ring toss game across the midway. He'd rolled up the sleeves of his flannel shirt and tied a bandana around his neck like some kind of modern-day cowboy. A cluster of teenage girls giggled at his jokes while their mothers watched with obvious appreciation. I was resetting the targets when I saw them, Tracy and Michael slipping away from their booths and walking toward the school building. They moved casually, separately, but I could see the intent in their body language. I waited 5 minutes, then told Mrs. Peterson I needed a bathroom break. The school was mostly dark, just the emergency lighting casting long shadows down the hallways. I followed the sound of voices to the gymnasium, where the doors were propped open. They were in there, alone, setting up chairs for Monday's assembly. At least, that's what they would have said if anyone asked. But they weren't setting up chairs. Tracy was in Michael's arms, her head tilted back as he kissed her neck. His hands were tangled in her hair, and she was making soft sounds that I remembered from our early years together. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, watching my marriage die in real time. Then I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had what I needed. Now, I just had to decide what to do with it. The small digital recorder had been in Tracy's car for 2 weeks when she finally gave me something useful. It was a Tuesday evening, and she'd told me she was staying late for a budget meeting. I was in my workshop when I heard her car pull into the driveway at 10:30 p.m., much later than usual for a budget meeting. The next morning, after she left for work, I retrieved the recorder and took it down to my workshop. I plugged it into my old stereo system and hit play. Most of it was just road noise and radio static. But starting around 8:15 p.m., there were voices. Tracy's voice. Are you sure this is okay? Michael's voice. Trust me, no one comes here after 6. The sound of car doors closing. Footsteps on gravel. Tracy. I feel terrible about Danny. He's been so distant lately. Michael. He doesn't appreciate you, not like I do. Tracy. But Ellie adores him. If he found out... Michael. He won't find out. We're careful. Tracy. I know, but sometimes I think he suspects something. The way he looks at me... Michael. Danny Sullivan fixes cars, Tracy. He's not some master detective. Just keep doing what you're doing and everything will be fine. The voices faded as they walked away from the car. I sat in my workshop, staring at the recorder, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Danny Sullivan fixes cars. I called Michael Devon at school the next day. Mr. Devon, this is Danny Sullivan, Ellie's father. I was wondering if we could meet somewhere and talk. About Ellie's future? There was a pause. Of course. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I just think it would be good for us to discuss her college prospects. Tracy thinks very highly of your opinion. Another pause, longer this time. I'd be happy to help. When works for you? How about Saturday afternoon? I know a quiet place where we can talk without interruption. That sounds perfect. The place I had in mind was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. I'd worked there briefly about 5 years ago, before the company went under and left the building empty. It was isolated, private, and had excellent acoustics. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I moved my truck to a different parking spot each day, taking pictures of Tracy's car in various locations around town. I synchronized times and dates, building a timeline of her deceptions. On Friday night, Tracy announced she was going out with some friends from work. "Girls' night," she said, kissing my cheek. "Don't wait up." I didn't. Instead, I followed her to a restaurant across town where she met Michael Devon for dinner. They sat in a corner booth, holding hands across the table like teenagers. I took pictures from my truck in the parking lot, using the telephoto lens I'd borrowed from Tony's camera equipment. Everything was falling into place. Saturday arrived gray and cold, with the threat of rain hanging in the air. I arrived at the warehouse early, parking my truck behind the building where it wouldn't be visible from the road. The interior was mostly empty, just concrete floors and steel beams reaching up to a corrugated metal roof. Pigeons nested in the rafters, and their droppings covered everything in a layer of white dust. I'd brought folding chairs and set them up in the center of the space, about 10 feet apart. Far enough for conversation, close enough for confrontation. Michael arrived at 2 p.m. sharp, driving his silver Honda Accord. He looked around nervously as he got out of the car, probably wondering why I'd chosen such an odd place for a meeting. "Danny?" His voice echoed in the empty space as he walked through the entrance I'd left propped open. "Over here," I called. He approached slowly, his footsteps loud on the concrete floor. He was dressed casually, khakis and a polo shirt, but he looked uncomfortable. "Interesting choice of venue," he said, settling into the chair across from me. "I like privacy when I'm discussing important matters." "Right. So, about Ellie's college prospects. Let's talk about Tracy first." The color drained from his face. "I'm sorry." "My wife, Tracy." "I think you know her pretty well." Michael started to stand up. "I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "Sit down, Michael." Something in my voice made him freeze. He looked around the warehouse, probably calculating distances to the exits. Then he sat back down. "I know about the affair," I said quietly. "I've known for weeks." "Danny, I can explain." "Thanks for last night." "You're amazing." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshot of his text message. "Want to explain that?" His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Or how about this?" I played the audio recording from Tracy's car. His own voice filled the warehouse. "Danny Sullivan fixes cars, Tracy. He's not some master detective. You recorded us?" His voice cracked on the last word. "I documented you. There's a difference." Michael stood up again, and this time I let him. He paced to the edge of our makeshift conversation area, running his hands through his hair. "Look, Danny, I'm sorry. It just happened. We didn't plan it." "Bullcrap." "It's true. Tracy was feeling neglected, unappreciated. She needed someone to talk to." "So you decided to talk to her with your dick?" He flinched. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Michael? Enlighten me." "We care about each other. We have a connection you wouldn't understand." I laughed, and the sound echoed off the warehouse walls. "A connection? Is that what you call it when you're screwing another man's wife in the backseat of her Camry?" "We've never—" He stopped, realizing he was about to admit to something worse. "Never what? Been in her car? Because I have pictures that say otherwise." "Or did you mean you've never had closeness? Because I've got recordings that suggest you're lying about that too." Michael's face went pale. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something very clearly. You've been playing games with my life, my marriage, my daughter's respect for her father. You thought you were so much smarter than the mechanic. But here's the thing about mechanics, Michael. We understand how things work. And when something's broken, we fix it. Are you threatening me?" "I'm explaining the situation." I stood up and walked over to a workbench I'd set up near the wall. On it were several manila folders, neatly organized. Folder number 1, I said, picking up the first one. Photos of you and Tracy at various locations around town. Restaurants, the school parking lot, that little motel on Route 9. Michael's face went white. Folder number 2. Audio recordings from Tracy's car. Some very interesting conversations about how stupid her husband is. Danny, please. Folder number 3. Copies of text messages recovered from Tracy's phone. I managed to get the backup files from her cloud storage. Did you know she saves everything? I walked back to where he was standing, carrying all 3 folders. And folder number 4. Love letters. Michael actually stumbled backward. How did you? Your ex-wife Cheryl has been very helpful. Turns out Tracy isn't the first married woman you've seduced, but she might be the last. What are you going to do? I set the folders down on my chair and looked at him for a long moment. I'm going to destroy your life, Michael, the same way you destroyed mine. I'll quit. I'll leave town, whatever you want. Too late for that. I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. See this? It's a live stream. Everything we've said in the past 10 minutes has been broadcast to a very small, very select audience. Who? Your principal, the school board president, the head of the PTA, and my personal favorite, the local newspaper's education reporter. Michael lunged toward me, but I was ready. He was taller, but I was stronger, and I'd spent 16 years working with my hands. I caught his wrist and twisted, sending him sprawling onto the concrete floor. The thing about adultery, Michael, is that it's not just about act. It's about lies, betrayal. Taking something that doesn't belong to you. I stood over him as he tried to get back to his feet. You took my wife. You poisoned my daughter against me. You made me doubt everything I thought I knew about my own life. I'm sorry. You're not sorry. You're caught. There's a difference. I walked back to the workbench and picked up one more item. A manila envelope thick with papers. These are copies of everything I just showed you. Along with a detailed timeline of your affair, witness statements from people who saw you together, and a complete financial analysis of the gifts you've given Tracy and the motels you've paid for. What are you going to do with all that? I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning. Fault-based, citing adultery. In this state, that means Tracy gets nothing. No alimony, minimal property settlement, and I get full custody of Ellie. You can't do that. You don't have enough evidence. I have more than enough evidence. But that's not the best part. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is a letter from the state education department. Seems they take a dim view of teachers who have inappropriate relationships. Something about moral turpitude and professional ethics. Michael's face crumpled. You're destroying my career. You destroyed my marriage. Danny, please. I'll do anything. I'll pay you. I don't want your money, Michael. I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything because of someone else's selfishness. I gathered up all the folders and headed toward the door. Wait, he called after me. What happens now? I stopped and turned back. Now? Now you get to explain to Tracy how her brilliant plan fell apart. You get to tell her that her husband, the mechanic who fixes cars, was smart enough to outmaneuver both of you. And then what? Then you pack your things and leave town. Because if I see you anywhere near my wife or my daughter again, we'll have another conversation. And next time, I won't be nearly as civilized. I left him sitting on the concrete floor of the warehouse, surrounded by the wreckage of his arrogance. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through town. I needed time to think about what came next. The confrontation with Michael had been satisfying, but it was just the beginning. Tracy's car was in the driveway when I pulled up. I sat in my truck for a moment, looking at our house. The house we'd bought when Ellie was 3, the house where we'd planned to grow old together. I found Tracy in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up when I came in, and something in my expression must have warned her. How was your day? She asked carefully. Interesting. I had a conversation with Michael Devon. The wooden spoon she was holding clattered to the floor. Danny, I can explain. No need. He already explained everything. Tracy leaned against the counter, her face pale. What did he tell you? The truth. Finally. I walked to the kitchen table and sat down in my usual chair, the one facing the window, where I could see our backyard and the swing set I'd built for Ellie when she was 7. How long? I asked. Danny, how long, Tracy? She wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold. 6 months. Since you started working at the school. It wasn't planned, it just happened. Nothing just happens, Tracy. You made choices. Both of you. I know you're angry. I'm not angry anymore. I was angry 6 weeks ago when I first suspected. I was furious 3 weeks ago when I confirmed it. But now? Now I'm just tired. What are you going to do? I pulled out the divorce papers I'd had prepared, set them on the kitchen table between us. I'm filing for divorce, adultery. You'll get the minimum the law allows, and I get full custody of Ellie. You can't take her away from me. I'm not taking her away. You gave her away when you decided Michael Devon was more important than your family. Tracy started crying then, the kind of dramatic sobbing that used to make me want to comfort her. Now it just sounded hollow. I made a mistake, she said. I can fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Tracy. Some things are broken beyond repair. Don't say that. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. There's no we anymore. You made sure of that. The front door opened and Ellie's voice called out, I'm home. Tracy wiped her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself. We can't tell her. Not yet. We're not telling her anything. You are. Ellie appeared in the kitchen doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder, looking from her mother to me with growing concern. What's wrong? She asked. Tracy looked at me pleadingly, but I just stared back at her. Sit down, sweetheart, Tracy said finally. We need to talk. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyers and paperwork, of awkward conversations and careful arrangements. Michael Devon resigned from Riverside High and left town without saying goodbye to anyone. The rumor mill worked overtime, but the truth was simpler than most people imagined. A marriage had ended. A family had broken apart. Life went on. Ellie took the news better than I'd expected. She was angry, mostly at her mother, but she was also 15 and resilient in the way that teenagers can be. She chose to live with me, which surprised Tracy but didn't surprise me. Ellie had always been able to see through people's facades. I knew something was wrong, she told me one evening as we ate takeout pizza in our too-quiet house. Mr. Devon started treating me differently after Mom began working at school. Like I was special because I was her daughter. How did that make you feel? Confused. Then disgusted, once I figured out what was really happening. Why didn't you tell me? Ellie looked at me with eyes that were suddenly much older than her 15 years. Because I knew you'd figure it out on your own. You always do. On a Thursday evening in November, 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, I was working late in my garage when Tracy appeared in the doorway. She looked different, thinner, older, like the weight of her choices had finally settled on her shoulders. Can we talk? She asked. I wiped my hands on a rag and nodded toward 2 old lawn chairs I kept in the corner. I've been thinking, she said once we were seated. About us, about what happened. Okay. I want you to know that I never meant for any of this to happen. Michael made me feel alive again. Like I was more than just a mother and a wife. You were always more than that, Tracy. You just never asked me to see it. I know. I know that now. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of traffic on the street outside. Do you think you could ever forgive me? She asked finally. I thought about it seriously, the way she deserved. Maybe, I said. Someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back. I know. Do you? Because for 6 months you lied to me every day. You lied to Ellie. You made me feel like I was losing my mind, like I was imagining things that were right in front of my face. I'm sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this, Tracy. Sorry doesn't give me back the nights I lay awake wondering what I'd done wrong. Sorry doesn't give Ellie back her trust in her mother. Tracy started crying again, but quietly this time. Real tears instead of dramatic ones. I loved you, I said. For 16 years, I loved you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. But love isn't enough when there's no respect. and you stopped respecting me a long time before you met Michael Devon. That's not true, isn't it? You called me simple. You told him I was just a mechanic, like that was something to be ashamed of. You made me small in your mind so you could justify making me small in your life. I never meant. It doesn't matter what you meant, Tracy. It matters what you did. I stood up and walked over to my workbench, where I kept a small framed photo of Ellie from her 13th birthday. She was laughing at something off camera, her whole face lit up with joy. The worst part, I said without turning around, isn't that you cheated. It's that you involved our daughter. You brought your affair into her school, into her relationship with her teacher. You made her complicit in your lies. She doesn't know the details, she knows enough. She knows her mother cared more about impressing another man than protecting her family. Tracy was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What happens now? Now you figure out how to live with your choices, and I figure out how to raise our daughter without you. Danny, this is goodbye, Tracy. Real goodbye. The papers are signed, the house is sold. Ellie and I are moving across town next month. You can see her every other weekend, just like the judge ordered. I don't want it to end like this. I turned back to face her, seeing the woman I'd married all those years ago. The woman who'd promised to love me through everything life could. Throw at us. Neither did I said. But you ended it the day you decided Michael Devon was worth more than the life we'd built together. Tracy stood up slowly, like an old woman with arthritis. I hope you'll be happy, she said. I hope you'll figure out what happiness actually means. She walked to the garage door, then stopped and looked back. For what it's worth, I do love you. I always have. I know, I said. That's what makes this so sad. After she left, I sat alone in my garage for a long time, surrounded by my tools and the comfortable smell of motor oil and metal. Outside, the November wind rattled the windows, and somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking. I thought about the man I'd been 6 months ago, trusting, naive, content with his small life. I thought about the man I was now, wiser, harder, alone, but not lonely. Tomorrow, Ellie and I would start packing for our move. We'd build a new life in a new place, just the two of us. It wouldn't be the life I'd planned, but it would be honest. It would be real. And that, I'd learned, was worth more than all the beautiful lies in the world.